Hey everyone, my name is Kim. In this video, I'm going to be going over troubleshooting tips you may need while maintaining your X-Range Propel. Lower cartridge removal. Removing a stuck lower cartridge requires the following tools: a 4mm hex key, variable pin spanner wrench with 6mm pins, propane torch, breaker bar or tube, heat-resistant gloves. The lower cartridge gets tighter with use. We do not use Loctite on the lower cartridge threads during installation for this reason. Our tip is to use heat from a propane torch. Focus the flame on the castings surrounding the lower cartridge. Heat until very hot to the touch, about a minute or so. Try the 6mm spanner wrench again. Be sure to use a towel or mitt to protect your hands from burning. If this is unsuccessful, attach a breaker bar to your wrench. Reheat the cap and try again. Side cap removal. As with the lower cartridge, you can use heat to remove stuck caps. You will need a 7mm spanner wrench, propane torch, heat-resistant gloves, a breaker bar to attach to your spanner wrench for extra torque, or a large pipe wrench, 24 inches for stubborn caps. Begin by focusing the propane heat onto the casting around the cap for about a minute or so. It is ready when the cast is very hot to the touch. Try the 7mm spanner wrench again. If this does not work, reheat the cap area, attach a breaker bar to your wrench, and try again. For extreme situations where the side cap won't come off with the earlier stated remedies, use a large pipe wrench. We use a 24-inch wrench. Place the wrench on both sides of the cap and turn. Use of heat is recommended. This usually destroys the cap but allows for new cap installation. Pedal body removal. There are a couple of tips for removing the pedal body from the crankshaft. I recommend using a propane torch. For this method, you will need a propane torch, a digital or click torque wrench, and or a 15mm wrench. Using the propane torch, direct heat to the crank arm surface around the pedal stem until hot to the touch. Then remove the pedal body with a 15mm wrench or digital torque wrench. Penetrating oil is another option to remove the pedal body. Spray the oil onto the surfaces where the pedal meets the crank arm. Wait an hour or so. Then try to remove with the torque wrench or the 15mm wrench. Drive cap lock nut removal. This removal can be challenging when replacing the drive cap gear. For this task, you will need the following: a 25-28 hook wrench, propane torch, clean rag or towel, heat-resistant glove. We will start by placing the short end of the drive cap crank spindle into your right crank arm recess. Wipe the grease or debris from the lock nut gear area. Now it is time for the heat-resistant gloves. Use your propane torch to heat the lock nut and the surrounding area on the gear until it is hot to the touch. Place the hook wrench into the slots of the lock nut. Secure the wrench fit with one hand while you rotate the wrench in a counterclockwise direction. Gear removal. Sometimes the gear does not slide off easily after you remove the transmission screw. My recommendation is to use a gear puller. We use the Posi-Lock puller. You will also need the following tools and supplies to remove the gear: an M5 set screw, 2.5 hex key, and a clean rag or towel. Start by wiping your gear clean of excess grease. Then, with a 2.5 hex key, thread the M5 set screw into the transmission rod or propeller spindle located in the middle of the gear. The set screw is not required, but it is a great way to ensure you won't damage the internal threads of the transmission rod or the propeller spindle. Unscrew both T-handles on the puller to accommodate the width and depth of the gear. Tighten the cage assembly on the lower T-handle so that the jaw is securely beneath the teeth on the gear. Now tighten the upper T-handle while centering the bolt on top of the set screw. Keep tightening until the gear comes off. Possibility of stripped crank bolts. Cast bolts. This can happen while installing or removing bolts. The most important rule is to stop right away if you think you have stripped the bolt. The sooner the better. For crank bolts, gently hammer the short end of an 8mm hex key into the stripped bolt until you feel the hex key is firmly seated. For cast bolts, use a 3mm hex key. Carefully and slowly turn the hex key until the bolt is removed. Now, throw that bolt away. Replace with new bolt. Creaky sound while pedaling unit, or clicking. There are two possible reasons that usually lead to squeaking and creaking. 1. Crank arms are not installed to 26 foot-pounds. 2. Thwart tube latches are not fully engaged. Check and make these adjustments to these settings. Squealing sound coming from the lower end of unit. Typically caused by the lower cartridge internal seal, this can be remedied by oiling the seal. This will require a 24-hour Loctite cure time. You will need the following to oil the lower cartridge seal: a 4mm hex key, variable pin spanner wrench with 6mm pins, a 3mm hex key, mineral oil, denatured alcohol, pin spanner wrench, cotton swabs, and a medium Loctite blue 243. First, remove the propeller by loosening the screw with a 4mm hex key. Remove the lower cartridge with a 6mm spanner wrench and install the propeller on the lower cartridge without securing the screw. Wipe grease off of the transmission screw at the top of the lower cartridge. Use a 3mm hex key to loosen, not remove, the screw. Remove the propeller and pull the propeller spindle down gently to remove the drive pin. Next, use the adjustable pin spanner wrench to remove the spindle lock nut. Set the lock nut aside. You will find the internal seal under the lock nut. Apply oil to the seal, then gently spin the lower cartridge spindle back and forth. Reinstall the spindle lock nut. Slide the drive pin back into the spindle. Gently push the spindle up into the cartridge and install the propeller. Remove the transmission screw with the 3mm hex key. Set cartridge aside while you wipe and brush off old Loctite off of the screw. Use the cotton swabs and denatured alcohol to clean off old Loctite out of the propeller spindle internal threads. Remove any grease surrounding the spindle threads so as not to interfere with the new Loctite. Drop 1 drop of Loctite onto the transmission screw and screw to 0. To set the tension, unscrew the transmission screw slightly. Test the back and forth play of the spindle within the cartridge. Then, test the tension by using the propeller to rotate the spindle. Make slight adjustments to the screw until you've reached the desired amount of tension. The goal is to get the least tension, easier spin, without any up and down knocking of the spindle in the cartridge. The adjustment unscrewing is slight and varies with each cartridge. Now allow your Loctite to cure for 24 hours. Install the lower cartridge into the unit by first placing the cartridge into the lower cast. Turn the cartridge by hand while using your other hand to gently rock a crank arm until you feel the gears meet. Use the crank arm to back off slightly to center the gears and continue to screw the cartridge in until it stops. Tighten with a 6mm spanner wrench. Reinstall your propeller. Line up the drive pin for mating with the propeller. The underside of the propeller has a slot designed to seat the drive pin for a more secure fit. Match the pin with a slot and slide the propeller over the propeller shaft. The propeller should snap right into the drive pin and lower cartridge. Tighten the prop screw with a 4mm hex key. Water intrusion process for submerged X-Range propels. Total water submersion is not good for your X-Range Propel. The bottom of the unit is watertight, but the upper part of the unit has 3 sensitive points that may take on water. Those are the grease plug and the 2 seals within the side caps. A splash should be okay, but total submersion has a high chance of allowing water within the unit. In a short amount of time, water will begin to corrode and then damage the internal parts of the transmission. If you happen to submerge your X-Range Propel, you can take the following steps to reduce water damage. Gently rinse the drive off with clean water. Do not use a sprayer or pressure nozzle. Pat the drive off with a towel. Remove the propeller with a 4mm hex key. Remove the lower cartridge with the 6mm spanner wrench. Pat dry. Remove the lower cast and dump out any water, then pat dry the interior of the fin. Remove the pedal cranks with a crank arm puller, then remove the side caps with a variable pin spanner wrench with 7mm pins. Pat caps dry. Remove the upper cast and pat dry. Dump any water that may be in the middle cast. Leave the drive in a dry environment and allow it to fully dry, about 24 to 48 hours. When you are confident that all of the parts are dry, you can reassemble the drive. As always, contact your local dealer if you have additional questions. Thanks so much for watching.